Justin Kerzner, thank you for joining me.
Thanks for having me. It's nice to meet you.
Justin, you just told me literally seconds ago you haven't really done one of these. You've been heads down for years, and that got me curious. What's been going on for years? Heads down, building magic molecule.
Yeah.
Let's hear the founding story.
So it's a long one. I'll try to keep it simple and brief. But my wife and I built a business. It started as being called Magic Molecule because that's brand number one in I guess under the parent co now. It's now called Magic Science Corporation. So under Magic Science, which we've been developing for years now, we deliver products in the world of hypochlorous acid, which is a incredibly novel solution that almost no one knows about, ourselves included, up until around kind of COVID time, about 4.5 or so years ago, which is a solution that our bodies naturally produce in the white blood cells in order to help effectively boost the healing process. So it can be skin cell repair, kills bacteria, germs, and viruses. It's this pretty unbelievable solution. It's the reason why, I mean, the silly example is if you think about like Wolverine and X-Men, he gets shot and he heals. Same sort of thing happens to our bodies. Unfortunately, not as good as he does it, but it's the reason why a sunburn fades and, eventually blisters and peels and goes back to your original skin. It's why, a cut turns into a scar. Hopefully it eventually goes away. This is basically a replica of that solution. So we came across it almost 5 years ago now, found a number of pretty amazing suppliers that were in the process of developing technology to figure it out, and then we ended up partnering with the one that did. And about a little over a decade ago, they patented this pretty amazing technology it's basically a generator. It's this big, like 12-foot metal machine that's able to electrolyze, is the scientific term, electrolyze saltwater solution and turn it into what's called hypochlorous acid. So it's very safe, it's incredibly effective. Science now has been around for better part of a decade, some studies even longer, but not stabilized for commercial use. So we came across it years ago, became fascinated with it, eventually almost addicted to it in a way because it was just so brilliant and helpful. And the coolest part about it is it doesn't just help with skin, it also, and this is where the Magic Science parent umbrella comes in, it helps disinfect pretty much anything. So whether it's your skin, removing bacteria, it could be as simple as like you shake someone's hand after they've accidentally coughed on it, not knowing, you can spread germs and viruses and whatnot. This helps remove that to keep you clean and safe, no different than a sanitizer. All the way to a surgical scar, a wound, a cut, a scrape, a burn, a zit, eczema, irritation, that sort of thing. And also outside of the body, such as a surface disinfectant or an odor purifier, like for air. So the solution is pretty miraculous, and the reason most people don't know about it, which is why we, being entrepreneurial, wanted to get involved in it, is because the technology to produce a shelf-stable version of it that lasts longer than just a few days was near impossible to create until fairly recently, when our partner, now, which we've recently acquired as part of a bigger deal, was able to figure it out, essentially. So that's kind of the simple, very short version of the story. And the reason it's now called Magic Science Corp is we have a second brand that we're introducing next year. No one really knows about it yet except our internal team, and I guess now here. That's going to launch in late Q2 or late Q3. That's specific to surface disinfecting. So it's an EPA surface disinfectant that, believe it or not, is safe enough technically to spray in your mouth or on your skin, but it kills bacteria, germs, and viruses 120 times more effectively than bleach.
Oh, wow.
Pretty
120
amazing.
times.
Yeah.
Justin, I'm going to drill into the early days. So you were in retail before, naked retail before Magic Molecule? Back. What was, so I'm also curious about the single ingredient approach with the hypochlorous acid. So, like, uh, what was that light bulb moment where you're doing something else and all of a sudden you get excited about this one ingredient? Was it like a completely random accident, or were you thinking, I learned a lot, I want to start my own brand, and I believe in this, let's find like one really effective active ingredient and see what we can build with it? Or was it like you just discovered something there's like, oh, this needs to turn into a product?
It's a great question. I wish it was that strategic, where we actually sat down and thought, hey, we should build a business in a category that can do this but be as simple as that. It was the exact opposite. We came across the solution sometime, I honestly can't even remember if it was during COVID or just beforehand, but came across the solution in some capacity and just fell in love with what it could do. We've always, both my wife and I have always been product people, so we love retail. Of course, with our experience in Naked, where we curated every single brand we could possibly imagine, right? And really, we appreciate design, but for us, it's about quality, efficacy, value at the end of the day, ensuring that what we sold to a consumer or bought for ourselves is actually good, right? And for us, price is an element of that, but you get what you pay for, right? The classic saying is very true, and something we've always believed in. And with the business that we set up with Naked Retail, we were always curators of what we believed to be the best. And in that, I guess once we came across hypochlorous acid, a friend of mine, told me a little bit about it just because he's a doctor, a totally different space, but I asked him about it. He told me, did a little bit more research myself, and I just continued to be enamored with it. And I phoned Lucas and his partners each individually. This was during COVID, and I was like, have you guys ever heard about this stuff? You're involved in brands as much or even more than I am. This is crazy, right? And the immediate response is there's no way. There's no way that you can have something that does all of this and is this simple. Because if you think about it from a scale standpoint, if you can take water and salt and turn it into this skin healing solution that works on almost every skin ailment and is safe enough to drink, safe enough to spray on a kid, safe enough to spray on an elderly person, any skin type, skin color, age, whatever, it's pretty unbelievable, especially if the science in detail says it works. So that's kind of where the fascination occurred. It was a very natural process. It was never intentional. And COVID was a weird one for Naked Retail. Obviously having the bulk of our business was this big store in Soho. And we had a 20-odd person team, 7,000 foot space. I think by the time, or around the time when it shut down in March 2020, at the time we had maybe 40 brands in the store, and we were just April was the month that we turned over, because we would redesign and rebuild the space every 90 days approximately. So we were just finishing up this one experience and finishing up the curation of the next one. So we had a lot on our plates. COVID put everything on pause, but it's not like the intention was to shut it down after the fact. We ended up still running Naked Retail as I was studying the world of hypochlorous acid for the better part of 2020. And then in 2021, we started getting into actually thinking about, okay, this could be a real business. Let's take the time, bring in the right people, put some money into it, think about the brand approach to it. And then this was all well before the regulatory side came in, which was another big learning for me. And that's where our partnership with our supplier, who's now all part of our combined business today, they taught me a lot on top of it all, which the crazy thing is, and I guess for a disclaimer, some of the things I say as it pertains to Magic Molecule, which is this brand specifically, the rules for this are governed under the FDA. On our next brand, they're governed under the EPA. So although we're talking about a similar hypochlorous solution, there are rules I can't say that this kills bacteria. I can say it removes bacteria. So that took another almost year just to get through the FDA, EPA process and really understand the fundamentals of a medical device essentially in the U.S. I'm Canadian originally, so Canada rules are even more strict, but the American ones are just as challenging. And from a consumer standpoint, it's not like launching a soda or another CPG type product where, as long as you can produce it and it's labeled appropriately and you follow standards, say cosmetic or food guidelines, the FDA is intense. Mm-hmm. So we learned a lot there too. And yeah, it was a process. So it took the better part of a couple of years to even get it launched. We didn't even launch Magic Molecule until last year, February. So still under 2 years ago.
You said you spent most of 2020 studying hypochlorous acid.
Call it studying and strategizing. Thinking about what it is and then what we could tell the customer that would actually make sense.
Right. Sounds a bit intimidating. So I kind of try to think of it as if I'm a person who's interested in starting my own brand, maybe like in health and wellness or skincare or supplements, or I'm trying to, I find one single ingredient. I remember stuck with me, another founder told me his wife spent the whole summer calling it the summer of nerddom, where kind of analyzing what's already in the market, what's missing, figuring out the gaps. So if somebody's trying to start something, let's say they discover something else that's similar but different, like single ingredient, how long of a studying or strategizing is a realistic thing to do before actually moving forward with it? So it seems like that's an important thing to invest in terms of a time commitment before jumping in.
Yeah, it's a really good question. It's almost impossible to answer because it's so different. And I'm sure Lucas can attest to this. When they were developing Freaks of Nature, I know they had aspirations to launch it. I forget what day it was supposed to launch or what month, even year, and it kept getting pushed. Same thing happened with us with Magic Molecule. We had plans to launch it at one time, had to continue to iterate, and some of it is building the foundational knowledge. For example, how are we going to make this? Can we make it correctly? Can we scale it? Is this supplier able to do what we're hoping we need them to do? Same with packaging, same with a website, same with setting up a 3PL for shipping, same with building a team. A lot of it is just the building stage. Whatever you assume, my rule of thumb is always just double it or triple it. So if you think you can do it in 6 months, assume it's 12 to 18 months. And even that may not be conservative enough. Mm-hmm. So there isn't really a set time for any of this stuff. It really depends, what foundation do you want to present to your customer and to your internal team? Because without a strong enough foundation, you're likely to have to stop and fix it. And that's the worst, in my opinion. If you have the makings of, it's no different than building the house, right? If you build it with cheap materials and a shitty contractor and, you cut corners, it's going to fall down. Same program in building a business or a brand.
You mentioned a doctor. Sometimes when I talk to founders who have products that have scientific backgrounds, they talk about partnering up with a scientist, for instance, for Freaks of Nature, that's what Lucas mentioned, one scientist. And other founders say they work with a chemist. Sometimes founders say, no, we actually go to 50 different manufacturing facilities and there you kind of figure it out, that you learn from there. What was your journey like?
All of the above. So the doctor, just a friend of mine, purely because he's been through medical school, done over a decade of schooling and research and then grad school and interning and so on. I knew his ability to read medical documents was a hell of a lot better than mine. Mine was the lazy version, which was, this is before ChatGPT, obviously, but, find a way to get it summarized, right? Read the highlights, go fast, look at the conclusion first, go backwards. He actually took the time to read the documents properly and study it the way a medical professional should. That was purely to just help me out, just because I didn't understand a lot of the journals that were out there. I was asking him questions. I don't have any good examples, but like maybe about a specific bacterial strain that was referenced in testing for a hypochlorous solution. And I would ask him, like, what the hell is this stuff? And he'd say, oh, that's just common cold, right? Like all of these, specific viruses and whatnot have such crazy names. Even E. coli, it's not actually E. coli, it's much longer. So a lot of it was just like helping dumb it down for me so I could understand the simplicity of it. The next step actually was to hire a product chemist. So a different friend of mine put me in touch with a chemist. He had built a number of different, he's like branding guy in California, so he built a number of brands over the years, and one that he had worked on, they worked with this amazing product chemist who he recommended. So she was actually the one that helped me find our supplier, after giving me a bit more of a foundation on hypochlorous acid in general, beyond what I had already known for a few months. And then from there, your last point about manufacturers, sometimes have people behind the scenes. In our case, that was exactly that. So the person within the organization that we partnered with, they had built this business. I think it was started in around 2011 or 2012. So well over a decade of experience now. And their chief technology officer is actually the guy that built the device, the hypochlorous electrolyzing device. So we pretty much had access to, like, from that beginning of that relationship, I had access to him right away, and I got to learn a ton from there. So for me, it was basically an all-in process, right? My friend who's a doctor, then the chemist, then the other one, through the organization.
You're right. You did all three. So
Yep.
we spent 2020. We studied the ingredient. We strategized. We have it all set. Now it's 2021. What was our first product?
It's our first and only product. It's this skin solution. So it's a hypochlorous acid spray. Legally, we have to call it an antimicrobial skin cleanser, so that's what it says right there. I wish it could say skin healing spray or skin repair, or, I need like the buzzy words that would help people understand, but legally it's an antimicrobial skin cleanser. So you can literally use this to spray on 100 different ailments, anything from eczema or psoriasis to a zit to, even like a cold sore on the mouth. If you have pink eye, you can spray it around the eyelid. Even beyond the body, you can spray it on pets. So technically it works on all mammals, because all mammals use hypochlorous in their blood to help heal. So it's pretty wild. The most obvious one, I have a cut on my thumb. It's hard to see now because it was a few days ago and it's been healing, but spray it directly on. So technically, and again, this is a behind the scenes conversation, more effective than Neosporin, safe enough to spray in your mouth. It kills bacteria, germs, and viruses. So this will not get infected as long as I continue to apply, and it'll help accelerate the healing process.
Man, this is like spraying Windex in My Big Fat Greek Wedding,
And that's where the
grandpa
brand
spraying
comes
Windex
in.
on everything to fix it.
Yes.
This is a little bit like the modern version of that.
Yeah, see, you're very much part of my demographic, which is millennial and up, who understand that. If you try to explain that to a Gen Z, they're like, what's My Big Fat Greek Wedding? Right? So, yes, but that's exactly what the story is. It's we've messaged that a couple of times, but a lot of the time, fortunately, if we tell the story well or well enough, the customer ends up saying that for us. So exactly how you interpreted it and then responded with those words, that's the perfect scenario.
So our first sales, how do we get our first 100 sales?
Marketing, just website. We launched February of 23. We started on Facebook, I guess the meta platforms of Facebook and Instagram with ads. We kind of fucked around, just tested. We weren't aggressive, and fortunately we didn't have to raise any money. This was just all myself and my wife funded it, and have so to date for the most part. We had a good team ready to receive, inbound, and quite simply released it and just started buying ads. And we were pretty strategic. We've got, as I said, pretty good people on our team who've got great experience in the D2C world. That's less my experience. I'm more of a product consumer guy, especially in person or in conversations like this, I talk a lot, so I can help sell. It's sort of in my nature, but online you don't really have that opportunity. So a lot of it was like just testing with tons of different ads week over week and seeing what eventually worked. The one that really took off for us in the first 90 days was right at the end of the third month. So it was April of 23. We launched an ad literally in the last week of that month. It was my wife sitting in our office, just at a table holding it. We didn't even have the big bottle at the time. It was just our small 2-ounce bottle, and she spoke for, I want to say it was maybe 45 seconds to a minute, about her experience using hypochlorous acid before our wedding, and she basically told the honest truth, which was she had a sample bottle. This was before the brand even launched. Had it with her, with the rest of her stuff. She had a bunch of mosquito bites about 48 hours prior to the wedding, and they were like on her shoulders and arms, and just like a mess and uncomfortable and itchy, and you could see the little red dots, and all she used was our solution, and by the time of the wedding, within 2 days later, they were completely gone. So no more itch, the redness was down, you could barely see the bumps anymore, and that's essentially what she addressed. And it was the truth, it was honest, it was very raw, the footage was like barely edited. All we did was add subtitles and just do some cropping so it wasn't too long, and it worked. We ended up selling out in that week, and then took us about 6 weeks to get restocked, because that inventory that we sold out in the first 90 days was planned for the first 9 months. And then we basically did it again 2 months later, did it again 2 months after that, and then really kind of ramped up the business.
Going back to the Windex conversation, it seems to me, at least, I'd view it as challenging. The storytelling part of a brand like this, how to balance the scientific, the clinical side of magic molecule with making it approachable for customers. Like, did you do any message testing with people? I mean, you kind of mentioned it with the newer generation. They kind of didn't understand the old references. But how were you doing the testing with people, and how did you, aside from your wife's wedding experience on video, it sounds like it was an effective messaging. Were you able to kind of get it tested with focus groups and have them kind of share their experiences, and then kind of use a certain storytelling method to kind of make it easier to understand for people? Because it's like I never heard of this acid before, so it just seems like I need to be educated for a little bit, and that just seems like a challenge.
Exactly.
To try to educate people.
It's a great question. So the way we did it was less traditional focus groups, less science per se, because in my opinion, and this is where my opinion isn't always right, but in this case it worked. We, prior to launching, we gifted, I want to say maybe 2,000 gifts to pretty much every single person we could possibly think of. So like, I went through my entire email list, flagged all the people that I wanted to gift to. We hand wrote cards to every single one, got their name, address, phone number, and whatnot, sent it to them, just for free. And all we said was, if you can be so kind, try the product, and if you like it, write us a review. If you don't, hopefully you don't. But that was pretty much it. So that, by the time we launched, we didn't have a crazy hit rate, but we probably got maybe 300 or 400 reviews directly on our website. And the nice thing is they're all verified customers, right? Because we used Shopify to ship to all of them, so they're treated like a customer, which then allowed us to market to them and not to sell them product, purely to say, hey, hope you had a great chance, hope you had a chance at this point to try the product. If you have and you enjoyed it, can you tell us, right? So like, click this button, give it 1 to 5 stars. If you can add any commentary as to what you experienced with it, did you like it and whatnot. And the authenticity that came from that was actually awesome. We even had people, which is like the most frustrating thing, because like within our network, who wrote shitty reviews, right? And we're like, you could have just said no or ignored it, but it's okay. Right?
That probably helped, right? Made it look real.
It did, yes, and that's something that I learned in the first, I guess later in that first year. And it's not like the reviews where I used this and it hurt, or I used this and I hate it and didn't work for me. It was like my bottle was a little leaky, so I gave it 4 instead of 5, right? And of course, our biggest thing always is about customer service. That's been myself and my wife's primary focus with any business we've been involved in. If you can't get a hold of us, if we're too slow to respond, if we're inappropriate, if you feel like we've taken advantage of you, that's the worst, right? Because that's the kiss of death for any business. Because you see it in airlines and stuff all the time, especially these days with social media. One angry customer posting one thing could go viral. Happy customers never go viral, right? Because it's like, oh, you're pleased. How do I even know if that's real? Right? That's usually the question that everybody asks. They think it's fake because they're so happy and so supportive. So we had this opportunity to really get real content and real reviews. So it immediately created some level of credibility. And sure, it wasn't all that much. It was only a few hundred reviews. And I guess the nice thing is because the product is affordable, it's not like you're seeing a few hundred reviews on a product that's like $80 or $100 or something crazy and a big barrier to entry. It's $25. So it's a low enough price point, and at the time we had launched, we were still offering free shipping promos, early discounts, big sales, buy one, send one to a friend. We kind of did a lot to really make it easy, knowing we'd probably lose a few bucks per order on the first time, but we had a ton of confidence, as we still do today, even more so today, that when people actually have a chance to use the product, they usually are stuck for life because it's that good. Especially yourself with a 4-year-old, I can't imagine, all the stuff that your kid goes through on a regular basis, right? Mm-hmm. So I'm experiencing it now at 1.5 years. So as they're able to walk and then run and try all this new stuff, between cuts and scrapes and rashes and all that, it's got to be significant. So it was a lot of that. And then from there, the more reviews we got, the easier it was to convert. And then what was really interesting for us and became a really good tool still to this day is the amount of customer service questions we had came through email for the most part, but also very fortunately Facebook and Instagram, specifically via the ads or posts that we had done, just organic ones. That ended up, the public stuff on Facebook and Instagram ended up turning into an FAQ. So the way people use Instagram today, they follow if a brand's fun, but other times they just go to a page, their profile, flip through the most popular or engaged posts, look for comments, read reviews. You can pretty much tell if a product, or at least give you some confidence if a product might work for you, right? And in our case, we had anybody who doubted it, not everyone, but a good portion would write in the comments, this sounds like snake oil, right? This is probably bullshit, there's no way. We didn't have people that were like, I'm a dermatologist, believe it or not, and I've never heard of hypochlorous acid, so it can't be real, right? And we're like, okay, well it is. We're an FDA cleared product, and that's all about building the foundation, as I was saying at the beginning. We're an FDA cleared product, we have years of testing, we produce it in the US, we label our product correctly, we have clear indications of use, we have science to back it up. It has to be real. Or we've found a way to break through the FDA with a fake product, which is probably an impossibility today. So, eventually, as more and more people started to like it, we did two things. The one, as people started to like it, they would actually see comments like that on a post because they became followers of the brand, and fans essentially, and they would actually support us and say, you should try it, it's not snake oil. I thought the same thing, it's amazing, trust me, right? And the other thing we did, which I really enjoyed doing, was the angriest, meanest, most horrific customers that would leave, not even customers, I guess viewers, that would leave a comment on Facebook or Instagram like that, we would actually respond to publicly and say, hey, please DM us your address, we'd love to send you a free product to try, which is totally counterintuitive, and you'd think that they're horrible. You watch how fast they become your best friends, First of all, they're so excited to receive a free gift because brands don't normally do that. They're always, about first purchase as opposed to longevity and loyalty, and it just shuts them up. Right? It's like, oh wow, maybe I didn't need to be such an asshole that time.
It seems like it might be a matter of time, like I'd never heard of hyaluronic acid, but now everybody kind of knows about it. Oh, it's just like
Yes.
a really popular skincare ingredient. It could be like that, right? Like at some point, it could just like get to a point where most people would know about this, and it's interesting that dermatologists didn't know about that. It must be really, really new.
We get lots of, it's the right advice from a lot of great people in our network that ask us all the time, how come you're not partnering with dermatologists and doctors and all this stuff to really help with the education? So far, I've spoken to 3 dermatologists, and granted, I've been pretty busy recently, so I haven't had time to really reach out to a lot and do it properly, but the 3 that I've spoken to, all 3 of them had not heard of hypochlorous acid. And once I explained it to them, they didn't believe me. So, eventually, if someone, maybe there's some derms listening, if they want to work with us, we're game. We just, I don't want to be, I think it's so inauthentic to hire a dermatologist or partner with one and have to teach them what this stuff is and why it's special. They should be teaching me. So I just don't want to do it in the pretend way, because you see so many derms on Instagram these days where they've got hundreds of thousands of followers because they've had some TikTok thing go viral and they kind of got lucky building it, and now every brand wants to work with them. We want to work with the ones that are legit. And if that person is legit, who's got 1 million followers, great. We'll happily work with them. We just want to make sure we do it right. I really don't want to kind of bullshit our way into working with credible partners.
Do you also work with creator influencers aside from Meta channel? And I also saw there's the Ulta Beauty. I'd love to hear that too.
Yeah.
Like which of these marketing channels are moving the needle for you?
Yeah. So creators are difficult for us because we have a lot of requirements. We're annoyingly for them, and I respect their process immensely, but it's difficult for them to work with us because we have such strict rules on what can be said. So sometimes creators that really like to do their thing and just kind of wing the conversation, which is appropriate, of course, in their world, it may not be appropriate for us. So we may see something where we've given them the script and all the details, the do's and don'ts, and we're usually as clear as we're able to be with time for them. They'll accidentally say, I had an infected something, right? Legally, we can't say the word infection as an example, right? We also can't, say somebody with eczema, which a lot of people in the US today have eczema or some issue related to it. A lot of the things they like to say, for example, the most common is, I use this to treat my eczema. The word treat is a no-go with the FDA unless you're actually a prescription device, which we're not prescription, we're OTC.
Yeah, you'll 100% get yourself in hot water because that concern that you're mentioning will 100% happen. Somebody will say it. Sticking to the script is not a common thing. But so, how did you get into 1,400 stores with Ulta Beauty? Was that hard to do?
It was hard to manage. Fortunately for us, it actually wasn't super hard to do. We've got an amazing retail team. It's a consultancy we work with. They're a close friend of mine. He was at some earlier stage D2C brands for a lot of years and ended up setting up a consultancy of his own. Groups, I think he'll appreciate the promotion. The group's called Middlebox. His name's Sebastian. He's one of the best there is in boutique retail strategy and execution. He and his team have a good network, the right approach. They're incredibly kind and supportive. They're just good people and very authentic and credible. And Seb doesn't fuck around. So everybody in his network knows if he's working with a product or a brand, you kind of just trust it, which is the best, right? He's built up enough of a reputation these days that he knows what he's doing, and he's taken the time to vet and really understand the potential. So he liked us. I mean, I've known him for years. We're both from Vancouver, Canada originally, so we kind of know each other from there too. And when we started on the retail side, we started way too early, which was my intention, knowing that D2C is always going to be a stepping stone. It's not the end-all be-all experience. It may be for some businesses, to a certain level, but for us, this is a product that literally belongs everywhere, right? Any convenience store, hardware store, which seems insane, but I mean, construction workers hurt themselves a lot, especially their skin. So there's a lot of range and opportunity, and when he and I spoke about this business probably a year before we even launched it, took me also a while to get him convinced, just because, again, the story seems too unbelievable. But once we actually built the brand, it started to resonate with him. He used the product. He and his wife, tested it out, enjoyed it, saw results. So it became pretty easy to start collaborating with him and his team. And the approach was kind of an interesting one. With Ulta, there were two questions. One from their team, and we actually spoke to, I want to say it was maybe 6 or 7 senior buyers there on the first intro call, not because they all had a big interest in hypochlorous acid or our brand, but because they didn't know which category we belonged in, which is very appropriate, right? Because it can do so much, and we never really, we didn't have the retail experience in a mid to mass level, so I couldn't even answer that question, right? I wanted to learn from them first before even making the wrong mistake and doing it or suggesting. So the first big question was, where do you guys sit? And then also, once we had that part of the conversation, they were like, okay, well, we still need to do our research on this ingredient. And so many people say hydrochlorous acid or hypochlorite, sounds like they can't get the name right. You did it perfectly, by the way. Congrats. That's a rare one.
I have it written down here.
There you go. So you practiced. But yeah, our whole thing, no different than the angry customer or viewers, before being customers on Instagram or Facebook. We were very keen on just getting product in people's hands, especially those that make important decisions. So before we could even talk about, they kind of addressed, all right, we're not really sure if we want to bring this in. Maybe it's 100 or 2 store test. Let's see. I was like, guys, before you even think about that, you need to use the product, because without your endorsement and your support and trust that it actually works, the rest of your team's not going to get it. So we basically said, let's wait a month. This was like in maybe January or so of this year. I was like, we're going to overnight all of you product. Just tell us how many bottles and to send it where. So we overnighted product to everyone. And we said, we'll check in 3 or 4 weeks from now and we'll see where we're at. And if you like it, if it even works, let's do it. So sure enough, exactly a month later, we get on a call, the exact same people joined, and every single one of them, I think for the most part, had an individual story to tell about how they used it. It was the most positive experience I'd ever seen. We had one who had a newborn, one who, I don't know, was like skiing or something and got a goggle burn or something, like strange stories, very broad. And then the question came up again, so it was like, all right, now we're into it, we're hooked, where the hell do we put you? And our theory was it's either got to be personal care, beauty, some version of that, or first aid, or both. And me at the very beginning, and not knowing how these large retailers work, I was like, we need multiple placements. It's got to be in first aid, in here, in there. And they were like, yeah, we're sorry, that's just not how these businesses work. Like, you're talking a lot of locations pretty early on. So their initial thought, to preface, was 100 to 2 stores. Then a month later, when we had this follow-up chat, they said, okay, we want to launch you in 600 stores in a program called Skincare We Love, which has 600 facings. Small presence, it was like literally this big, like very small. But for 600 stores, it's a good first order. And then they basically said, after about 6 weeks, we want to launch you chain-wide, because a big thing for me was impulse, since and at the time, by January, we had already introduced the standard bottle, the 8-ounce, the bigger one. So the other question was not just where we put you, but what goes where and what we actually bring in. Their big thing was, we only want to buy 2 ounce. And I was like, okay, guys, you know how you just started using it and you're really liking it? Just wait till you figure out the other 100 use cases for it. You're going to be asking me for bigger bottles, right? And they're like, oh, okay, yeah, we get that. So, and we gave them indications of how we use it, how our friends use it. Sebastian told his story and how he uses an 8 ounce now. And even when he travels, he carries 2 2-ounce bottles because he likes to carry on, so no checked luggage. But in any case, we ended up with Impulse was our second big facing, and that's what put us chain wide. So over 1,400 stores, literally at checkout, basically. But yeah, it was not a normal approach to retail, I think, for any brand, but again, because of the value of the solution, how quickly and effectively it works, I think there was a good amount of credibility behind us working with Seb and the Middle Box team, plus all the vetting and time we took into building that foundation, with the FDA clearance, with the team that built the technology, the proprietary value there. It was sort of a mix of all of the above. And then the biggest challenge for us, with Ulta, was ensuring that we could actually fulfill enough inventory, which we were ready for as best as we were able to be. But I mean, after the first 6 weeks or so, and by the time we launched the Impulse, they basically bought every single 2 ounce we had for 2024. So we 2 weeks ago finally restocked our 2 ounce bottles after the mid-July purchase order, which was like a really solid one. So we've caught up basically, which is nice.
Positioning is such an interesting thing. When you were telling me these challenges that you've experienced, it reminded me of some of the software that I built in the past that the website said, the all-in-one solution to blah, 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 and then nobody would really understand what it was doing. You're like, is this for me? Like, what exact problem does it solve? Yeah. It solves that, but it could also solve this, and this, and that. So it's almost like you can just use the same thing, put it in different bottles, and put a different brand name or the same solution. This is for first aid. This is for skincare.
Yes.
But it could be the same thing, and that could probably work well.
So Justin, that's the best learning experience that we've had today with marketing. Is like you should almost skip the tagline, like for your comment, right? The all-in-one solution, all that stuff. Better way to do it is like literally just tell me what to use it for. So like if we killed our tagline and just wrote or just showed 3-second videos, and one was you spraying your kid, his knee, another one, somebody spraying their face after they've just dried off with a towel, another one after a workout spraying their shoulders, neck, and face. Done, right? Easy.
Yeah, interesting. Justin, knowing what you know now, if you wanted to start a new brand, would you still pick an FDA approval-based path, or would it be something easier?
I guess it depends which. In our case, with Magic Molecule, I wouldn't change a thing. Doing it the right way, getting the FDA clearance, that's what sets us apart. There are a few other hypochlorous products on the market, but they're not FDA cleared. And the credibility, the trust, the value, the consistency, that's an enormous one for us. Anytime somebody talks to me about the food space, like food, beverage, packaged goods, all that stuff, I'm always scared shitless because, like, for them, and that's why I've very rarely gotten involved in that space. No matter how big or small or efficient and organized the business is and the infrastructure, one mistake can ruin the entire thing, right? Like recently we've seen in the news, I think it was at Salmonella or E. coli with Bora's Head, like the meat company, enormous business, right? And, there's like death, really, like what are they, 10 people have died now or something like that. So, the foundational stuff is so unbelievably important. And in our category, because we're allowed to talk, not just because of the FDA, but hypochlorous in general, even as a cosmetic, if we didn't have FDA clearance and we start telling people to spray it on an open wound, what if it was contaminated, right? What if it wasn't bottled correctly? Or, it's got some other thing that could potentially infect someone and hurt them? I don't want that risk. I don't want the personal guilt. I don't want any of it. I'd rather do it right, take the time, spend the money, figure it out correctly, and deliver a product that's actually legit.
Mm-hmm. Final two-part question. Top 2 problems giving you a headache right now, and top 2 priorities for the year that you're excited about.
Okay. Headache. I think one would be creative. Content is so important and somehow so difficult at the same time. I think it's because we're all pretty precious about brands, especially brands that have legs for growth. I'm picky. I'm probably a step below Lucas in terms of brand precision, but it's really important that messaging is conveyed correctly. Identity looks clean. It has there's consistency across all different channels, right? From like packaging to bottle to all this stuff. For example, for our independent, like smaller retailer business, which is growing pretty rapidly now, we created this like silicone, it's like a placemat basically for display purposes, just to keep everything contained and nice and branded. And it looks fantastic. We just got the sample the other day, and the color is off by like barely 1 Pantone. And we ended up asking the team to redo it, spend the money to do it right, because if we accept that, we're stuck. And now every retailer on the independent side is going to have a different blue than the Magic Molecule blue. And it's really important because it's just not going to resonate the same way, and it's going to look different, in all these different categories. So creative is a challenge always, finding great creatives that have an interest in sticking with the business long term, because the creative process, like, they need to be inspired on a regular basis, and consistency is usually the thing that is least inspiring for them. We're in a good place because we have a lot of creative to develop and a lot of retailers and growth, but still challenging to ensure that precision as we grow so fast. The other thing, I had it and I just forgot.
Let's do the priorities.
What's that? Sorry?
Let's do the priorities then.
Priorities. What was that question? Sorry.
What are the priorities for the year that you're excited about?
That's right. I think the biggest priority for us top one for us is team. We need to be really strong internally, and I feel like we're now 28 people full time, plus a bunch of consultants, some advisors, and so on. And a fast-growing team, you start to lose opportunities to communicate on a regular basis, whether it's all 28 people talking to me and having access to me, or anyone else on the team. Plus, our facility is in Minnesota, so half the team is based there, whereas the other half is in New York, a couple sort of randomly placed. So you sometimes lose that value. It's different when everybody's in the same office working Monday through Friday and like really connecting on a regular basis. So that's a big one for me, is how do we maintain that connection and trust, and and nobody feels like they're forgotten or not important, because everybody's important no matter what they do. Every aspect has to be done right and well, and with excitement, or it's going to feel shitty. So yeah, communication's a big one. And then the other big one for us is consistently establishing that we are the most credible hypochlorous product on the market. As a category becomes popular, and we're still very early stages, but it's growing fast, more copycats will come out. And
which you're welcome, right, to grow the category?
It's great. I love it. It also makes our job harder. So on one hand, it's awesome because they're doing a lot of the work for us, but on the other, every single time a new one comes out, especially one that, I don't know, has an influencer behind it, or a celebrity that started it, or, just money, right? Like, money means problems competitively. So it's our job to maintain that consistency and that trust, and ensure that we're also being appropriate in our response. The last thing we want to do is say, oh, that product's shit, right? You don't want to buy it. Because we care more about talking about the value of our product than we do, being nasty and mean to someone else. So, it's consistency, growth, trust, credibility, but fundamentally our biggest priority is people.
Justin Kerzner, thank you for sharing your journey with me.
Thanks for the time, man. It's great meeting you.